Hello, and Shabbat Shalom. Well, Pesach is now past. What comes next? Do you remember the show, The West Wing? The president was always asking, what's next? So, in the Jewish calendar, it's always a question of what's next. And what's next is Shavuot. But we're not quite there yet. Because on the way to Shavuot, we get involved in what is known as counting the Omer, counting down the days to Shavuot in anticipation of what Shavuot will bring to us, which these days, and actually for quite a few days already, has been Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of our Torah. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, if we go back a couple thousand years to temple times, really Shavuot was an agricultural holiday. And the counting of the Omer was an agricultural process, actually, where the people were counting down in anticipation of the harvesting of the first wheat. And that is something that took place and was celebrated on Shavuot, which is also called Chag HaKatzir, the festival of cutting of the wheat, or the harvest. And also, it's also called Chag HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits. So what would happen? People would stream in from all corners of the country to Jerusalem, to the temple, to offer the first fruits of the harvest. And the way the Mishnah describes it, it was a very festive occasion with music and processions, and the animals would be decorated with all kinds of jewelry and gold, and it must have been quite a spectacle to see these tens of thousands of people descending on Jerusalem and celebrating in the courts of the temple. I like to say that in those days, Judaism was a lot more fun than it is now. Many more of the senses were involved, as there were animal sacrifices, and there was incense, and there was feasting, and there was celebration on a massive scale. The only thing today that I think compares to it would be, and pardon the comparison, a rock and roll concert, where you have thousands of people celebrating and music playing and dancing in the aisles and so on. So we don't have that in synagogue today. Although I have to say that these days there's a much more celebratory atmosphere here at Shaarei Tzedek than any time since I've been here. If you haven't seen our new service yet, it's something to see. We have music and we have singing and we have celebration. And it's quite a contrast from the rather sober and somber service that we've had here for so many years. Anyway, getting back to Shavuot. A great celebration of the harvest. But when the temple was destroyed, what happened? There was no longer any possibility of a sacrifice in the temple, and this whole ritual of bringing the first fruits came to a sudden stop. So the rabbis were stuck with a system that was very much land-based and temple-based, and now the land was not so much of a factor, and the temple was no factor at all. So they had to completely rewire the system, and Shavuot, instead of being an agricultural holiday, became a celebration of the giving of Torah. And that is what we've been celebrating for the last couple thousand years, to great effect. It's always been one of the three major festivals of the Jewish year, along with Sukkot and Pesach. But I would say that as Torah has faded in importance in the minds of many Jews, so the holiday of Shavuot has almost disappeared. We will be having a wonderful community-wide celebration this year at Temple Shalom, to which you are all invited. There will be much learning and much celebrating there. And that is the way we do Shavuot these days, with extensive classes and discussions and study of the Torah, which is, for me, really the greatest joy possible. So this is enough for today. We'll have more on Shavuot and the counting of the Omer next week. In the meantime, I wish you a happy post-Pesach period, happy counting of the Omer, and Shabbat Shalom.